So, my name is Gavan Cheema, and I'm here in Vancouver right now on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. My family's from Punjab. My parents immigrated here. I was born and raised in Surrey, which is on the Kwetland Territory. And I'm here, and my role of artist in residence at Ruby Slippers, and I'm introducing the Theater in Multicultural Perspective series. And I have two lovely folks that I'll let them introduce themselves, but I have Adele, Noronha, and Carmen Aguirre here to talk to me today.
Currently identifying, I guess, as a theater artist. I'm a theater person. I perform sometimes. I dabble in other things sometimes. I gather folks and enjoy being with people. I am currently hanging out I have to look this up in the territory of the Mississauga, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat people, so also known as Tuckeronto. I haven't moved here, just so everyone's not concerned. I just happened to be here for a minute. And yeah, I will hand that to Carmen.
Yes, I'm joining you from downtown Vancouver, Squamish People's Territory. And I am a theater artist, author, and that's it. I'll leave it there. The introduction part, the introduction.
Amazing, thank you. So we're going to jump in. We're talking about allyship today and what it means to you and how it shows up in your practice. So do you, one of you want to speak about that, and we can start from there?
Sure. I'm old, so I'll go first. I don't know what I mean by that. Great question. Allyship. I mean, I often it's not a word that is in my vocabulary. A word that is in my vocabulary, which I think is similar, is solidarity. And for me, solidarity is the opposite of charity. So solidarity is horizontal, right? There's an equal relationship, as opposed to charity, which is vertical, right? And therefore, in my view, humiliating to the receiver, and also doesn't actually challenge the status quo. Charity, I mean. So in regard to solidarity, it's certainly a place that I try and operate from at all times, at work, which is where we are right now, right? Like in this conversation, to me, we're at work, right? As theater workers. What it looks like to me, I was trying to think about a really specific example so that it's concrete. So we're talking about something concrete. And one that I came up with was right before the pandemic, the Electric Company Theatre and Playwrights Theatre Center premiered my play Anywhere But Here, which had about, I don't even remember, I think it was 9 actors. And we were aiming to have 9 Latinx actors. And one of the leads, we found the perfect Latinx person for one of the leads 3 times over, but none of those people were available. So we ended up hiring Pakistani Canadian actor Nadine Phillip to play that. And for me, that made perfect sense, not because I believe that all brown people are the same. Of course not, right? Like that whole colorblind casting. No. To me, it was an act of solidarity because the Combahee River Collective, who are the Black socialist feminist collective that coined the term identity politics in the 1970s, what they were referring to was they were never a separatist movement, right? They were saying marginalized communities, in today's language, we would call it equity denied, right? Equity denied communities across the board share similar oppression. And so by hiring Nadim to play this Chilean dad, I was not saying, oh, Pakistan, Chile, kind of the same. Of course not, right? But what I was saying to myself, at least, was this is as much an act of solidarity as it is an act of authenticity. He brings so much to this role, and we are also giving him an opportunity to play a role that he wouldn't normally be considered for. And with that, I want to leave this little that I'm saying and hand it over to Adele by saying that it is impossible for me to think about solidarity without tying it to labor. You know, because basically I'm a socialist, not basically, I am a socialist. So, you know, for me, it's like who's getting the work, who's getting the space, who's getting the resources. So it was wonderful to be able to give a fellow brown man, you know, brown person work. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm just gonna launch right in because thank you, Carmen. I'm also like fully using this to write notes as Carmen speaks because as I mean I will also write notes as Gavan speaks as well because there's a lot to learn. Thank you, Carmen, for mentioning that. Yeah, the term ally is something that actually I don't really use anymore. Or I don't know if I ever really used it. It's hard to use it on yourself. I've never used it to identify myself, and it might be a millennial aversion to like labels, but also just I've had people say that to me in you know like about me, but it's not something that yeah, and I think the way that I thought about it was like it's a matter of how do I be with other people, how do we keep committed to each other, and how to grow together in that way. And yeah, for me, allyship also has turned into a bit of a passive state, or like a voyeuristic language where someone stands outside of it. And I think about the times that I've been in rooms, particularly with a lot of Indigenous artists and elders who've really talked about like who've said the words co-conspirator. Like you're in there with it. You're not if you know, and in it is also the messiness of it, the like uncomfortableness of, oh my God, I don't know how to process this moment. I don't know how to. I might be a terrible human right now because I actually might not have the right words to say, but this commitment to also to grow with one another. And yeah, I have a lot of questions around that currently in my practice that really lean towards, yeah, how do we make mistakes with each other? How do we stay together in that growth? And how do we, how do I rid myself of like my inner policeman, my external policeman, my inner Karen, my outer Karen, whatever those like weird terms are, you know, like how much I'm complicit in that behavior as well, even when no one's in the room. And I really appreciate Carmen speaking to labor and resources. And I one of the prompts you sent us, Gavan, which I found really interesting, is like, how do I practice this? And I avoided it as much as I avoided the term ally. But it is very concrete, if I'm being honest. It is the distribution of resources. In the last little while, I've really been mindful about trying to connect communities with other communities in order to have resources reach each other. As I've gotten older, I've entered different tax brackets, so being able to actually like be very conscious about where I put my own resources towards the artists that I believe in, and also to be aware that, you know, for us as artists with a certain kind of social capital or a certain kind of, especially practice, the older we get, how to be conscious about how we ourselves are resources. So where do I put my time and my efforts and my energies and my talents? It is very specific, and how do I, relieve other people of, or how do I create capacity building spaces? How do I even put myself in capacity building spaces? I think it's so amazing that you brought up Anywhere But Here, Carmen, because it's making me think about when I was really early stages as a performer. I actually got to be in a very early workshop of that show, and I played the Madonna character, the Lady of Guadalupe, and
you were so good at that. Yeah.
Thank you. And I remember thinking about how, because I'm in another room right now with some incredible thinkers and people who really like try and ask us to not think in binaries and how do we be in process with one another. We have a lot of conversation. And I was thinking of you, Carmen, because I was thinking about how I entered that um, that workshop being like, I have no idea who Pinochet is. I have no idea. Like, you were the first person I heard say Marxist. And I'm like, what is a Marxist? And then like a whole bunch of other bros talked about it after that. But to hear Carmen Aguirre speak about, speak to what you believe in and the people you surrounded yourself with. And I'm so glad you spoke about solidarity, because Carmen, I have so many questions around the ways we be with one another and the ways that you've experienced being with other people through some really high stakes things. We don't abandon each other. And for me recently, that's looked like, how do I not abandon myself?
Lots of things that you said, made me think about things. So for example, one of the things that you said, and I'm paraphrasing. Okay, no, I won't paraphrase. I'll just say what I need to say. This, to me, allyship or being in solidarity with somebody or with a group of people has nothing to do with agreeing with every word that comes out of their mouth. So
as we all nod in agreement. Yeah.
Like if I had to agree with every single thing that came out of somebody's mouth in order to be an ally to them or to be in solidarity with them, I would not be working in the theater. I don't think there's probably like 1% of the theater industry in Canada that identifies as socialist, right? So like even that alone, right? Like, yes. I like how you were talking about, Adele, how you were talking about allyship also as we get older, also almost taking on the role of mentorship, almost being synonymous with mentorship. Right? And I've been called an elder by enough people now in this industry to take that very, very, very seriously, right? And I understand culturally, I'll speak about my culture, but I know that is probably the same for many cultures. You don't just proclaim yourself an elder. You need to be given that title by more than one person. And so I have been given that title by lots of people who I admire and respect, who are younger than me, like young enough to be my children. And I take that very, very seriously. I know that comes with a huge responsibility. And so I really, that really helped me, what you just did, Adele, which is to kind of marry this concept of mentorship with allyship and how those two can go together, right? And going back to how do we disagree with each other, and in my book, it's never about, I'm not in solidarity with somebody because I agree with everything that comes out of their mouth at all, right? I think it has to do with the core values that we're operating from, right? And the core values in my books always need to be care and respect, and more than identity, more than anything else, it's what are the core values that we are operating from at work? We're at work right now, and care and respect, I was thinking also in thinking about this conversation today about the Rainbow Coalition, Fred Hampton's Rainbow Coalition in Chicago in the late 60s, early 70s, right? Where he was a Black Panther and he got to, the Black Panthers got together. I'll never remember the names of these organizations, but, Puerto Rican organizations, Chicanx organizations, and white organizations that use the Confederate flag. And they all got together as allies and formed a coalition, the Rainbow Coalition, because they were able to identify what the enemy was. And the enemy was poverty. And that's what they all had in common. Right? That what they all had in common was that they all came from poor communities. Interestingly, without ever saying a word, without, the white folks who all came from Appalachia and were experiencing discrimination based on class, I would say, in Chicago, and they were the ones using the Confederate flag. the Black Panthers and the Chicanx and the, Puerto Ricans never said a word about it. Never said a word about the Confederate flag. Never said, that's a very racist flag, right? They themselves stopped using it. They themselves came to their own conclusions and stopped using the Confederate flag, right? The more the coalition, the stronger it got, and the more they all realized how much they had in common in regard to, well, who is the enemy or what is the enemy? It's capitalism. These white folks on their own got rid of the Confederate flag. Which brings me to another point, and then I'll let Adele talk again, which is, another way to be in solidarity with each other in this industry is I try to operate from this place of hard on issues, soft on people. So again, I think that relates to care and respect. We're all on different points of our journey based on our levels of privilege and or oppression. So I don't think, except in obviously there are specific scenarios in which I think it is important. I just don't think it's beneficial to our industry to finger point individuals, right? Except in cases, I'm talking about when crimes have been committed, like somebody has assaulted somebody. I'm referring to ideas. I'm referring to discourse, right? If we're having discourse, and people or a group of people or somebody is saying something that is very, very offensive to many of us, I tend to err more on the side of, well, do we need to cancel them? Or do we need to just talk about the issue, right? Going back to the Rainbow Coalition, right? They never said, I was about to swear, I won't swear. They never said to the Confederate flag folks, get out of here, you can't be a part of this, how dare you have the Confederate flag on you, this is ridiculous. They never did that.
Absolutely. I think one thing that's resonating for me based on what both of you are talking about is kind of how allyship or solidarity and how that shows up when it comes to accountability and how it in terms of like what actually makes artists feel validated, supported so they can thrive. Because I think when I think about allyship, that's the things that come up to mind for me, especially as somebody that's leading spaces, is how do I show up for people where they can do their thing and feel like they're thriving. And whatever that is in terms of the artistry, whoever they are showing up in that space. We're almost running out of time, and it's I know we can talk about allyship forever because it's such a big topic, but I just wanted to leave a little bit of space for kind of any closing thoughts that either of you had. If you want to share that now, the floor is yours.
Oh, no, it's been amazing. And I could sit here and talk with both of you for hours. And I just always want to acknowledge the shoulders that I stand on, that none of everything we're talking about, did we invent it, nor is it happening in a vacuum, nor did we think of it. And, so I just always want to acknowledge my mentors, Marina Gale, who passed away many years ago. So many of them, right? So all of these conversations, the fact that the three of us are even here, it's thanks to all the racialized women that came before and made massive, massive sacrifices so that we could be in the theater, and who could never make a living at it because they were never cast, who could never make a living at it because the plays they wrote were never even considered, who could never make a living at it because they were never even considered to direct a play, like, et cetera, et cetera. And this is in my lifetime. I'm talking about the 90s and the shoulders that I stood on, right? So I just always want to acknowledge that
Yeah.
we all come from a long line of women before us who it's thanks to them that we're here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for bringing that into the room, this room, the Zoom room. Yeah, Carmen, I want to say also like thank you, Gavan, for like bringing us into this kind of space together because, you know, going a little bit more further on that, like there's a lot of women who have existed, but we don't get to think out loud. And, you know, particularly as someone who's predominantly been an actor, like I think people who know me know that I have thoughts, but they're the practice of being a thinker within this craft is something that tends to be reserved for like academics or things like that. And so, you know, how do we create spaces in which there is knowledge sharing and respect for intelligence and this kind of pouring into collective intelligence, including the intelligence that has come before us, that has brought us to where we are now. And I want to acknowledge the specificity of like you, Carmen. For me, I was thinking about how I wouldn't have gone to Studio 58 if I didn't see your picture up on the wall. I just wouldn't have. I just needed to see that somebody had been here before. And it was a black and white photo, but I could tell you were brown. And I could tell that I knew what an Aguirre was, you know. And
yeah, that means so much.
And also like again, like from when I was coming up as an artist, the providing opportunities to practice, you know, the many artists who provided us opportunities to practice and Gavan, like hearing of you through somebody else and, you know, like bringing us having meals together, us having shared community together that we stand by, people we believe in together. So much so that I'm like, you know, you're like, come chat at something. I'm like, I don't even care what it is. I'm here for your journey and for your career. Like that's my commitment to you. And I think these ways in which we commit to one another speak volumes. And I think it says more than the term ally. And I want to practice I don't even call myself, but I want to practice being a human with that spirit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, you two. This has been so wonderful. My heart feels so full. Yeah, I think that's probably it in terms of time and the things that we can jump into for this conversation. But I wanted to thank you both for your time and your thoughtfulness and coming to this conversation with an open mind and an open heart. And you're both artists that I really admire. So I'm also really glad that I had the opportunity to connect and just chat with you two because it's always a pleasure connecting for sure.
Thank you, Gavan.